Hello everyone, this video is for 8th grade math. We're going to be taking a look at our first lesson from week 3 of AMI. We're going to be doing Module 6, Lesson 6 today. That is your lesson titled Bivariate Data. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the first page of the lesson, page 53. So that's where we'll be starting. So what we're going to be looking at for the next 2 weeks is we are going to be taking a look at what we call scatter plots. So we're getting into some statistics material here, but it's very closely related to what you guys have been doing recently with linear equations. So we're going to throw it back to what we were doing before we left for being at home and take a look at how we can use concepts that have to do with linear equations to actually model real world data. Sorry guys, getting a little tongue-tied there. Now, let's start by going through our information at the top of the page, which says a bivariate data set consists of observations on 2 variables. For example, you might collect data on 13 different car models. Each observation in the data set would consist of an X and Y pair. So this is what this is saying is we're about to take a look at a table that is demonstrating some data that someone gathered on 13 potential cars. The X variable is going to represent the weight in pounds for each car. The Y variable is going to represent the fuel efficiency, which means how many miles the car gets to the gallon before you need more gas. So we're going to represent that with MPG, which stands for miles per gallon. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. So like I mentioned before, this is represented as a table. So the model is going to be each different car. Weight is that car's actual weight represented in pounds, and fuel efficiency is referring to its miles per gallon. So let's go ahead and take a look at question number 1 and see what it wants us to do with this data. It says in the table above, the observation corresponding to model 1 is 3,223. Sorry guys, I have 2 cats jumping on top of me right now. So it wants us to first start by identifying what the fuel efficiency of car model 1 was and what the weight of the car was. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can identify those 2 answers for yourself, and then we'll come back and talk about them. Okay, so our fuel efficiency is going to be 23 miles per gallon. I'm going to abbreviate this here. That is equal to 23 miles per gallon. Now, our weight for the car was 3,200 pounds. So, if you can figure these out, you understand how to read the table, because we're going to need the table for the next part. All right, go ahead and pause the video and make sure you have these right, and then we're going to move on to the next part. All right, now for part 2. So we have officially moved on to page 54, the second page of the lesson. What we're going to be doing here on the second page is we are going to be making a scatter plot for the data. So the first thing we need to think about is, how did they know which set of information to put on the x-axis and which set of information to put on the y-axis? So the first thing I'd like to point out to you guys is, let's talk about that idea of independent versus a dependent variable again. The information gathered gave us a lot of different weights for cars and what the fuel efficiency was for each of them. So what we're trying to prove here, or find out with the scatter plot, is there some kind of relation between the data? Do we think that the fuel efficiency will be higher as the weight increases? Or maybe do we think the fuel efficiency will be lower for the car as the weight increases? The point of using a scatter plot is to try to see if two sets of data are actually related and have to do with each other. So we're making the assumption here that the fuel efficiency of the car will depend on the weight of the car. So the weight of the car is going to be our independent variable in this case. So we're putting it on the x-axis. Fuel efficiency is going to be the dependent variable, or our y variable, so it is going to be on the y-axis. So the first thing you guys need to do to be able to use this scatter plot is we need to take a look at the scales they used. When you're making a scatter plot or a bar graph or whatever type of visual aid you're making, you always need to make sure your scales fit. So if you take a look at the weight in pounds, it goes up by 50 pounds every time. The reason it goes up by 50s instead of 1s or 2s is our graph would go forever and not even be able to fit on the paper if we did it that way. So what we're going to have here is a scale that goes up by 50s. You guys, when you're looking at the graph, you might notice that we have this jagged line here. The jagged line represents that you did not start at 0. It means you skipped some amount of numbers between 0 and where you're at. So keep that in mind. You're entirely allowed to do that on a scatter plot. Now, we have our scale listed on the x-axis for the weight in pounds. So as I go up each line, I'll have 2,550, then 2,600, 2,650, so on and so forth until I get to 3,000. And it will continue like that all the way up. Let's look at what was decided on as a scale for the fuel efficiency. So in case you didn't notice, it's actually going up by 1 every time to include all numbers from 0 through 30. So we're going up by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 through 10 is the next portion, 10 through 15 is the next. So the scales make sense with the numbers that were listed. The next thing that needs to happen is we need to plot the points that would go on the scatter plot. So I'm going to show you guys plotting a couple of the points on the video, and then I'll pause the video and have you guys go ahead and fill in the rest, and then we'll come back. So car number 1, which is, I believe, is already listed, would be at 3,200 pounds and 23 miles per gallon. So 3,200, we go from 3,000 to 3,050, 3,100, 3,150, and 3,200. So it should be my fourth line in between 3,000 and 3,500. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I would follow that line straight up to where 23 would be. So as you look, we're going up to here, and this line should be 3 above 20 if this point's in the right place. So let's take a look. 23, 22, 21, 20. Yep, this one's good to go. So now I'm going to show you where a couple more points would be. So let's do the point for Model 2. Model 2 was 2,550 pounds. So if you look here, 2,500 is one of my big numbers. I'm only going to need to go one leg forward. So I'll go to the first line. That would be 2,550, since our scale is by 50 pounds. Now I'm going to go up to 28 miles per gallon, the fuel efficiency of car 2. Keep following it up until I get to 28. It's going to be 3 above 25. So I'm going to go up from here. I'll go up 1, 2, 3. So there is my point. I'll go ahead and do one more. I'll do point number 3 for Model 3. Model 3's weight was 4,050. So that's going to be one leg past 4,000. Now, we're going to go up to a fuel efficiency of 19 miles per gallon. So we'll go up to 1 below 20. Keep going up. I should be stopping right here. So I look, I'm going to double check myself. Yep, that's it. So you're going to repeat this process until you have all of the points plotted. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and put all these points on myself. And you guys, I would want you to do the same. And then let's look and see what we have after that. Okay, everyone. So your scatter plot should look very similar to mine once you have all the points plotted. So something I want to point out is the fact that it almost looks like I could draw a line down through these points. They're all trending sort of in the same direction. There's a couple that aren't quite right, but most of them are going the same way. So that's actually the type of thing we would look for when we're trying to see if there is a pattern or some kind of relationship between the different sets of data that we're trying to compare using the scatter plot. So let's take a look at what question 3 wants us to do. It says, do you notice a pattern in the scatter plot? What does this imply about the relationship between the weight, or the x values, and the fuel efficiency, the y values? So since this is trending down in fuel efficiency, but the weight is increasing, I would say that the more the car weighs, the less fuel efficiency it has. Or the higher the fuel efficiency, the less weight the car has. You could write that either way you choose. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the bottom and show you what I wrote for my answer for that. Okay, everyone, so here's what I wrote for my answer to question number 3. I put that the fuel efficiency increases as the weight decreases. And remember, you could have put that as the opposite if you chose to. Both answers would have been fine. And so that wraps up lesson 6 for us. I'll be back Thursday with another video over lesson 7, where we'll look more in depth at how we compare and analyze a scatter plot, and we'll talk about things like correlation. So that's coming up. And I also want to give you guys a heads up on your next assignment. Next week, you guys are going to be making your own scatter plot. So if you guys want to start thinking about what information you want to try to compare or find, then feel free to. I'm going to leave it pretty wide open. I'm going to let you pick your own topics, but I do want you to keep in mind it needs to be something entirely appropriate. And you probably want to pick something that you think maybe has to do with each other, or maybe you could pick something that you're not sure if it does, and you could actually test the theory of if these are related, just like we would do with a scatter plot. All right, guys, so that's all for me today, and I will talk to you guys on Thursday.